The air on the desolate, windswept plains of Raxus Prime was thick with the acrid scent of ozone and scorched durasteel. Master Kalen Voss, a Jedi Councillor known for his calm demeanour and strategic mind, stood beside CC-4477, Guardian, his clone commander. Their 501st Legion detachment was overseeing the final mop-up of a separatist holdout, a routine operation that was drawing to a close. Suddenly, a chilling encrypted transmission cut through the comms. It wasn't the usual tactical update. It was Supreme Chancellor Palpatine's voice, distorted by static but unmistakable, issuing a single, horrifying command. Execute Order 66. A searing pain lanced through Guardian's skull. The inhibited chip, dormant for so long, flared to life, attempting to seize control, to overwrite his very being. Kill the Jedi. Eliminate them all. The command was absolute, primal, overriding. But something was wrong. A microscopic flaw in the chip's fabrication, a fraction of a nanometer off, created a momentary short, a glitch. Instead of immediate compliance, Guardian's mind was plunged into a maelstrom of agony and conflicting directives. He saw Kalen not as an enemy, but as the general who had led him through countless battles, the man who had saved his life on Christophsis, the friend who had shared ration packs and quiet jokes. Around them, other clones, their faces suddenly devoid of expression, raised their DC-15 blasters. The telltale hum of charging energy cells filled the air. "General!" Guardian gasped, his voice raw, fighting the overwhelming urge to obey. "Run! The chips! They're activating!" Kalen's eyes widened, the Force screaming a warning in his mind. He didn't hesitate. As the first blaster bolts whizzed past, he ignited his emerald lightsaber, deflecting the shots with practiced ease. Guardian, still battling the internal torment, shoved Kalen towards a nearby transport. Then, with a guttural roar, turned his blaster on the clones, who were now firing at him. His aim was true, but his heart was breaking. These were his brothers, yet they were puppets, their minds stolen. The transport lifted off, Kalen at the controls, Guardian slumped in the co-pilot's seat, clutching his head. As they ascended through the smoke-filled atmosphere, the comm channels exploded with fragmented, horrifying reports. Jedi temples under siege, Jedi masters falling, confused cries from loyal clone units who were suddenly being fired upon by their own brethren. Then, the chilling, triumphant declaration from Coruscant: the Galactic Republic will be reorganized into the First Galactic Empire. Palpatine's grand plan, meticulously crafted over decades, was unfolding. But it was not the seamless, silent purge he had envisioned. The glitch, small as it was, had rippled through the clone army. Not every chip failed, not even a majority, but enough did. Enough clones, like Guardian, either resisted the command or their chips malfunctioned, leaving them horrified witnesses to the betrayal. Some, seeing their Jedi generals attacked, instinctively defended them. Others, their chips completely inert, were simply confused, and then horrified by the actions of their comrades. Across the galaxy, pockets of Jedi survived. Master Plo Koon, instead of being shot down, had his starfighter's systems locked by his wingman, Commander Wolf, whose chip flickered. Wolf then transmitted a desperate warning before engaging his own squadron. On Kashyyyk, Yoda felt the disturbance, but instead of fleeing alone, he found a small contingent of Wookiees and a handful of clones who refused to fire on him. Their faces etched with confusion and fear. The immediate aftermath was chaos. Palpatine, furious at the unexpected resistance, had to consolidate power through open warfare rather than a swift, decisive coup. Systems where Jedi survived, or where loyal clone units spoke out, refused to recognize the new empire. the nascent Imperial fleet found itself battling not just separatist remnants, but also rogue Republic forces, led by Jedi and their defiant clone allies. Kalen and Guardian, after making contact with a small network of surviving Jedi, found themselves at the heart of a burgeoning resistance. They discovered that the clones who had resisted Order 66 were invaluable. They knew Imperial tactics, understood the clone psyche, and provided a unique bridge between the Jedi and the disillusioned citizens of the galaxy. These free clones, as they called themselves, became the backbone of the early rebellion, their loyalty forged in the fires of betrayal. The Empire, though vast, was immediately challenged. Instead of a period of quiet consolidation, Palpatine faced a galaxy already in open revolt. Small, agile cells of Jedi and free clones conducted daring raids on Imperial supply lines, liberated oppressed worlds, and broadcast messages of hope that countered Imperial propaganda. One such operation, weeks after the declaration of the Empire, targeted a critical Imperial fuel depot on the Outer Rim world of Mur. Kalen, leading a strike team of free clones, including Guardian, moved through the dense, force-nullifying Isalamiri forests. Inside, Jedi Knight Lena Sol, a survivor from the Coruscant Temple, disabled the internal security. The coordinated attack was swift and brutal. Imperial stormtroopers, many of them just newly recruited human conscripts, were no match for the combined might of Jedi and battle-hardened, free-thinking clones. As the fuel depot erupted in a spectacular fireball, Kalen looked at Guardian, his face streaked with grime, but his eyes clear and resolute. "This is just the beginning, isn't it, Commander?" Guardian nodded, his blaster still smoking. "For the Empire, Master. It's the beginning of the end." The galaxy was not yet free. The fight would be long and arduous, filled with sacrifice and hardship. But unlike the dark future Palpatine had intended, hope was not extinguished on that terrible day. It flickered, it struggled, but it remained, a defiant spark in the heart of a galaxy that refused to bend its knee. The glitch in the Order had saved more than just a few Jedi. It had saved the very soul of the rebellion. The insidious core of Order 66 lay hidden within every clone trooper, a tiny, bioengineered inhibitor chip implanted at birth. Its sole, sinister purpose was to override their free will, transforming loyal soldiers into unthinking assassins at a single command. But on that fateful day, as Supreme Chancellor Palpatine's chilling directive echoed across the galaxy, something unexpected happened. A sudden, uncontrolled mission. A microscopic flaw, a near imperceptible error in the chip's intricate design, perhaps a fraction of a nanometer off, or a stray energy surge during activation, caused a critical malfunction in a significant number of these implants. For clones like CC-4477, known as Guardian, the activation wasn't seamless. Instead of immediate cold compliance, his mind was engulfed in a storm of agonizing pain and conflicting directives. His mind was engulfed in a storm of agonizing pain and conflicting directives. The chip screamed kill. But his own memories, his loyalty to Master Kalen Voss, the general he had fought alongside for years, surged forth, battling the programming. He saw Kalen not as a target, but as a trusted leader, a friend who had shared quiet moments and faced death beside him. This agonizing internal struggle, a true battle for his very soul, allowed him precious seconds to warn his Jedi, to push him towards safety, even as his brothers, whose chips had activated perfectly, began to fire. Across the stars, similar glitches unfolded. On a distant world, Commander Wolf, Master Plo Koon's loyal second-in-command, felt his own chip flicker and seize. but not fully take hold. A momentary break in the programming allowed him to lock down Plo Koon's starfighter systems and transmit a desperate, fragmented warning before the darkness claimed his own immediate actions. Other clones, their chips completely inert, simply stood, confused, then horrified as their comrades turned their blasters on the very Jedi they had sworn to protect. Some experienced a brief, disorienting lag, just enough time to question the command before it fully took hold, leaving them with a terrifying memory of what almost was. It wasn't a universal failure. The majority of chips functioned as intended, leading to the tragic fall of countless Jedi. But enough of these tiny, engineered betrayals went awry. Enough clones either resisted the command, their minds strong enough to fight the invasive programming, or their chips failed entirely, leaving them free to choose. This crucial, unforeseen variable meant that Palpatine's meticulously planned purge was not the silent, swift extermination he had envisioned. Instead, it ignited an immediate chaotic resistance, fundamentally altering the destiny of the galaxy. Master Kalen Voss, a Jedi consular whose calm demeanor belied a formidable strategic mind, was thrust into the unimaginable. On the desolate, wind-scoured plains of Raxus Prime, the universe tried to tear itself apart around him. The chilling encrypted transmission from Palpatine, issuing Order 66, was meant to be his death knell. But fate, or perhaps a tiny manufacturing error, had other plans. It was CC-4477, Guardian, Kalen's seasoned clone commander, who became his unexpected savior. Guardian, usually a paragon of unwavering discipline, suddenly gasped, a raw, tormented sound. His face, usually impassive beneath his helmet, contorted in an agony that mirrored the force scream Kalen felt erupting across the galaxy. The words, Guardian, choked out, were fragmented, desperate. General, run! The chips, they're activating. This split-second warning, a heroic defiance against an insidious command, was all Kalen needed. As the air filled with the ominous hum of charging blasters from Guardian's own brothers, Kalen's emerald lightsaber sprang to life. He moved with a speed born of desperation and the Force, deflecting bolts that sizzled past his robes, a dance of green light against crimson energy. Guardian, still battling the searing torment in his own skull, didn't hesitate. He shoved Kalen towards their waiting transport, then, with a guttural roar, astonishingly turned his own blaster on the very clones who were now trying to murder their general. The escape was a chaotic blur of laser fire and the desperate hum of the transport's engines. As they ascended, Kalen glanced back at Guardian, slumped in the co-pilot's seat, clutching his head, fighting an unseen war. That Guardian, and other clones like him, had managed to resist the overwhelming biological imperative of the inhibitor chip was nothing short of a miracle. It was this unforeseen glitch, this defiant spark of free will, that ripped a crucial hole in Palpatine's meticulously woven web of deceit and destruction, ensuring that not all Jedi would fall that day. When the chilling whisper of "Execute Order 66" rippled through the comms, it wasn't just a command. It was a violent surge, a searing agony that ripped through the minds of every clone trooper. For CC-4477, known as Guardian among his brothers, the pain was immediate, a burning ice in his skull. The inhibitor chip, a silent passenger since his inception, roared to life, screaming a single, monstrous directive. Eliminate Jedi General Kalen Voss. Senseless. Eliminate all Jedi linked to the light called Kalen. The vibration resonated in CC's skull, and the sharp, edgy General Kalen Voss, senseless, but something within Guardian recoiled. He saw Master Voss, not as an enemy to be exterminated, but as the steady presence who had navigated them through impossible odds on countless worlds. He remembered Voss sharing his own meager rations during a long siege, the quiet nod of approval after a successful maneuver, the sheer bravery Voss had displayed in rescuing wounded clones from enemy fire. These weren't just orders, they were bonds forged in the crucible of war, years of shared triumphs and narrow escapes. The chip's programming fought to override these memories, to strip away his individuality and turn him into a mindless weapon. Yet, a stubborn flicker of his own will, aided by a microscopic flaw in the chip's design, clung desperately to the truth. His muscles tensed, his hand twitching towards his blaster, but his mind screamed, "No!" The conflict was excruciating, tearing at his very being. His brothers around him, their eyes glazed, were already raising their weapons, their faces betraying no hint of the comrades they had been moments before. It was in that agonizing split second, amidst the screams of his own protesting mind, that Guardian made a choice. He defied his programming. With a guttural cry, he warned Master Voss, then turned his weapon on his former comrades, those who were now enslaved by the Order. God was his world, the same way he had his world, the same way he had his world for 5 years, then turned his weapon on his former comrades, those who were now enslaved by the Order. Master Voss primers, now heavy with drought, the Voss Foru. This act of defiance, repeated by other clones across the galaxy whose chips likewise malfunctioned or whose wills proved too strong, was a pivotal moment. It wasn't just about saving Jedi. It was about reclaiming their own minds, demonstrating that even genetically engineered soldiers could possess free will and unbreakable loyalty. Their refusal to yield shattered Palpatine's illusion of absolute control, sowing the first, vital seeds of a genuine rebellion. The declaration crackled across the holonet. Palpatine's face, usually so unassuming, now twisted into a visage of cold triumph. The Galactic Republic will be reorganized into the First Galactic Empire, he proclaimed, his voice resonating with an insidious power. This was meant to be the final, crushing blow, the seamless transition from a fallen republic to a unified totalitarian regime. But the galaxy didn't fall silent. Instead, a cacophony erupted. On worlds where Jedi Masters like Kalen Voss had survived, shielded by the desperate defiance of clones like Guardian, Palpatine's words were met not with acquiescence, but with bewildered fury. Senators, many of whom had supported the Chancellor, watched in stunned horror as Jedi, once their protectors, were suddenly branded traitors, and their clone saviors were declared rogue elements. Confusion reigned supreme. Republic military outposts, still loyal to the old order, found themselves under attack by clone units whose eyes held no recognition, only cold obedience. Entire planetary defense forces, previously allied with the Grand Army, now had to side with the newly declared Empire or stand with the few, scattered Jedi and the clones who had broken ranks. On Ryloth, the Twi'leks, recently liberated by Jedi General Ayla Secura, whose life, in this timeline, had been spared by a last-second desperate plea from Commander Bly, himself fighting the insidious programming, stared at their holopads in disbelief. The woman who had fought for their freedom was now branded an enemy. The Republic, their beacon of hope, was gone. This wasn't the silent, efficient purge Palpatine had meticulously planned. It was a messy, bloody birth. The nascent Imperial fleet, instead of simply establishing dominance, was immediately forced into skirmishes with desperate Jedi, with loyal Republic starfighter squadrons, and even with pockets of clones, still wearing their Republic colors, battling their former brothers. The Force-sensitive echoes of betrayal and defiance resonated across the stars, turning what should have been a swift consolidation into an immediate, fragmented, and utterly chaotic struggle. The galaxy was at war once more, but this time the lines were blurred, and the fight for freedom had begun before the tyrannical grip could fully tighten. The clones who defied Order 66, or whose inhibitor chips mercifully failed, found themselves in an agonizing limbo. They had served the Republic with unwavering loyalty, fought beside the Jedi they now witnessed being hunted, and suddenly they were pariahs. Cast out by the nascent Empire, seen as traitors by their brainwashed brethren, they were forced to forge a new path. These free clones, as they began to call themselves, quickly became the beating heart of the nascent rebellion. Their value was immense, far beyond just their combat prowess. They knew the Imperial machine intimately. They understood its tactics, its logistical weaknesses, and the psychology of the clone troopers still under the chip's control. Where Jedi like Master Kalen Voss had fought for years with the clones, the free clones had been the clones. They could predict maneuvers, identify weaknesses in armor, and even interpret the subtle hand signals and cadences of their former units. Commander Guardian, for instance, provided Kalen Voss with invaluable insights into the composition of newly formed stormtrooper legions. He knew which units were still mostly clones and which were new Imperial recruits, a critical distinction for mission planning. He could pinpoint the most likely patrol routes, the standard protocols for Imperial checkpoints, and the favored strong points of Republic-trained officers who had now turned to the Empire. Beyond their tactical knowledge, the free clones served as an essential bridge. Their existence shattered the Empire's narrative of a swift, unified takeover. They were living proof that the clones were not mindless automatons, and that dissent against Palpatine's tyranny was not only possible, but active within the very ranks he sought to control. This resonated deeply with disillusioned citizens across the galaxy, inspiring hope and encouraging many to join the cause. They were more than just soldiers. They were a symbol of free will in a galaxy threatened by absolute control, and the bedrock upon which the true rebellion would be built. The chilling declaration of the Galactic Empire, broadcast across all frequencies, was not met with the unified silence Palpatine had surely intended. Instead, the galaxy erupted in a cacophony of confusion, disbelief, and immediate furious resistance. On worlds where the news arrived just after a Jedi had narrowly escaped, or where a loyal clone unit had turned on their brethren rather than their general, the message of a glorious new order landed like a death knell. The betrayal was too raw, too sudden, for many to accept without question. Master Kalen Voss, listening to the triumphant address from the cockpit of his battered transport, felt a cold dread settle in his stomach, mixed with a flicker of grim satisfaction. Palpatine's voice was filled with a triumphant deceit, painting the Jedi as traitors. But Kalen knew better, and so did the determined face of Commander Guardian beside him. They saw firsthand the horror that had been unleashed, and they knew the truth would begin to spread. Across countless star systems, the immediate aftermath was far from the swift, decisive coup Palpatine had envisioned. The insidious Order 66 had been devastating, yes, but its failure to be absolute meant that many planets, still reeling from the sudden betrayal, refused to simply bow down. On Cato Nemoidia, where Master Plo Koon had survived due to Commander Wolf's intervention, the Nemoidians, aided by the bewildered but uncompromised troopers of the 104th Battalion, openly defied Imperial occupation. On Selukami, Jedi Master Stas Ali, forewarned by a loyal scout trooper, rallied local forces before the Imperial enforcers could secure the planet. News of Jedi surviving, though scarce, ignited sparks of hope. These weren't isolated incidents. Palpatine, enraged by the unexpected widespread defiance, had to resort to open warfare to assert control over a truly rebellious galaxy. The nascent Imperial fleet, rather than simply parading through supposedly loyal systems, found itself locked in skirmishes against rogue Republic forces, led by the very Jedi he had sought to exterminate, and their unexpected allies, the free clones, whose chips had failed or been removed. The peaceful transition to tyranny became a brutal, contested struggle from day one, planting the seeds of rebellion not years later, but in the ashes of the old Republic itself. The galaxy, instead of silently submitting, was plunged into an immediate, fiery defiance. A defiance that would shape the years to come. The Galactic Civil War had barely begun, yet its front lines were drawn not just across star systems, but within the very hearts of those who fought. For the surviving Jedi, like Master Kalen Voss, the initial shock of Order 66 was slowly replaced by a grim resolve. But their resilience was magnified, unexpectedly, by the unwavering loyalty of a new kind of soldier, the free clones. These weren't just clone troopers whose chips had failed. They were individuals who had seen the deepest betrayal, yet chose the path of honor. When Kalen, or Jedi Knight Lena Sol, moved through the hidden bases and makeshift camps, they saw more than just soldiers. They saw brothers. And the free clones, in turn, looked upon the Jedi not as distant generals, but as living symbols of the ideals they now fought to reclaim. This deepening connection was a powerful counter-narrative to Imperial propaganda, which painted the Jedi as traitors and the clones as mindless drones. The very existence of Commander Wolffe, who had turned on his squadron to save Plo Koon, or the unnamed clones who shielded Yoda on Kashyyyk, became a testament to free will. Their defiance, interwoven with the Jedi's unwavering commitment to justice, became a potent, unspoken creed for the burgeoning rebellion. In a galaxy plunged into darkness, the sight of a Jedi fighting side by side with a free clone, their movements synchronized, their trust absolute, became a beacon. It was a tangible symbol that hope had not died on Coruscant, but had instead been reborn in the loyal hearts of those who chose freedom over tyranny, bond over betrayal. The immediate aftermath of Order 66's failed execution plunged the galaxy not into the silent, iron-fisted peace Palpatine had intended, but into a volatile shadow war. There was no swift, decisive victory for the newly declared Empire. Instead, the sudden, violent shift ignited a myriad of brushfire conflicts across countless star systems. On worlds like Saliukami, where Jedi Master Kalen Voss and his defiant clone commander Guardian had escaped, loyalist pockets solidified, refusing to acknowledge the Imperial decree. These early holdouts became staging grounds for hit-and-run tactics, disrupting nascent Imperial supply lines and broadcasting messages of defiance. The speed and savagery of the Empire's initial crackdown, meant to enforce obedience, instead fueled a passionate, unyielding resistance. Imperial forces, particularly the newly minted stormtroopers, often found themselves outmaneuvered by experienced clone units who had rejected the order. These free clones, like Guardian, with their intimate knowledge of Imperial protocols and clone trooper training, became invaluable strategists for the fledgling rebellion. They knew where to strike, how to infiltrate, and how to cripple the enemy from within. Jedi like Lena Sol, having survived the initial onslaught on Coruscant, emerged from hiding to become rallying points. Her presence, often subtle, would inspire local planetary defense forces to resist the Imperial takeover. Master Yoda, though profoundly saddened by the galaxy's suffering, moved through the Outer Rim, his quiet wisdom guiding disillusioned citizens and strengthening their resolve against the encroaching darkness. Even Commander Wolffe, wrestling with the trauma of his chip's momentary malfunction, led small, autonomous cells of clones who specialized in sabotage, striking at Imperial communications arrays and fuel depots under the cover of hyperspace jumps. Wolffe commissioned a generation of considerable scientific research, to study. This wasn't a grand organized rebellion yet, but a furious, decentralized insurgency. Small starships, once cargo haulers or civilian transports, were hastily rearmed. Guerrilla cells composed of surviving Jedi, defiant clones, and newly awakened freedom fighters ambushed Imperial patrols, rescued prisoners, and shared vital intelligence across encrypted channels. The Empire, still in its infancy, found itself constantly reacting, unable to fully extinguish the countless sparks of rebellion igniting across the vast expanse of the galaxy. The Shadow War had begun. A struggle for the very soul of galactic freedom, fought in the dark corners and forgotten systems of a galaxy that refused to yield.